Have you ever woken up feeling like the entire room was spinning around you? That distressing sensation of imbalance that seems endless, leaving you clinging to your bed, afraid to even get up to use the bathroom. If you answered yes, know that you're not alone. Millions of people suffer daily with labyrinthitis and vertigo episodes, often without understanding what's really triggering these debilitating episodes. What few people know, and this might surprise you, is that a simple food that's probably in your refrigerator right now could be the silent trigger behind these episodes. And the first one on our list is so common that you probably consumed it today without having any idea of the damage it could be causing to your balance system. Before we reveal the 5 foods that may be secretly triggering your labyrinthitis episodes, let me share something impressive. According to Mayo Clinic data, approximately 40% of people over 40 will experience some type of vestibular disorder during their lifetime, with labyrinthitis and vertigo being the most common. As a doctor specializing in balance disorders for over 18 years, I've seen an alarming pattern. Many of my patients improve significantly when they eliminate certain foods from their diets, but most healthcare professionals rarely mention this connection. Why? Because the focus is usually only on medication treatment, not the actual causes. Today, I'm going to share with you what I've discovered in almost 2 decades treating patients with balance problems. Let's start by exploring 5 common foods that may be silently triggering your episodes, from least to most surprising. And believe me, the first one on the list will shock even other specialists. Let's start with the 5th most problematic food for those suffering with labyrinthitis: refined sugar. Did you know that innocent sweet treat after lunch could be contributing to your dizzy spells? Refined sugar, present in sodas, cakes, cookies, and so many other processed foods, can cause sharp spikes and drops in blood glucose levels, directly affecting your vestibular system. Rosa, 68, a retired nurse, came to my office after facing recurring vertigo episodes for more than 2 years. Doctor, I've tried everything. I take medications, did vestibular physical therapy, but the episodes keep coming back. Especially after breakfast, she reported, visibly frustrated. When I analyzed her diet, I noticed a pattern. Rosa consumed white bread with industrial jam every morning, followed by sweetened coffee. What happens in our body when we consume refined sugar on an empty stomach is fascinating and, at the same time, concerning. Our vestibular system, that delicate labyrinth in the inner ear that functions like a true GPS for the body, depends on constant and stable blood flow to function properly. When we consume refined sugar, especially on an empty stomach, our blood glucose levels spike rapidly, forcing the pancreas to release large amounts of insulin to compensate. This metabolic roller coaster can temporarily reduce blood flow to the inner ear, destabilizing the delicate crystals responsible for balance, exactly like loose pebbles in a shoe that interfere with your walking. For Rosa, the solution was simple but powerful. We replaced refined sugar with natural alternatives like organic honey in small amounts, and switched refined carbohydrates for whole grain versions that release glucose slowly into the bloodstream. Doctor, I couldn't believe that something so simple would make such a difference. My episodes reduced by more than 70% in the first month, she shared in our follow-up appointment. It's important to note that not everyone needs to completely eliminate sugar, but significantly reducing its consumption and never ingesting it on an empty stomach can make a surprising difference. Try substituting refined sugar with small portions of whole fruits, which contain fiber that helps moderate sugar absorption. If you suffer with vertigo, try going 2 weeks without refined sugar and observe the difference. Many of my patients report improvement in just a few days. But remember, don't stop any medication without medical guidance. This approach should complement, not replace, your current treatment. Now, let's move on to the next food on our list, which may be silently compromising your balance system. The 4th food that frequently triggers labyrinthitis episodes is caffeine, present in coffee, black tea, sodas, and energy drinks. Caffeine, although loved by many for the energy sensation it provides, can be particularly problematic for those suffering with balance disorders. Carlos, 61, a salesman who traveled long distances by car, came to my office with complaints of severe dizziness that appeared mainly during his work trips. Doctor, it's desperate to feel like I'm going to lose control of the car at any moment. I've already reduced my speed, take frequent breaks, but nothing works. I even thought I'd have to abandon my profession, he told me, with teary eyes. When investigating his daily routine, I discovered that Carlos consumed an average of 6 cups of strong coffee during his trips, plus energy drinks to maintain attention on the roads. What many people don't understand is caffeine's vasoconstrictive effect. It literally narrows your blood vessels, potentially reducing blood flow to the inner ear. Additionally, caffeine is a powerful central nervous system stimulant, increasing the sensitivity of the vestibular system and amplifying symptoms like vertigo and ringing in the ears. Imagine your balance system as a delicate camera tripod. Caffeine would be like someone constantly moving and adjusting that tripod, making it impossible to get a stable image. The scientific evidence about this connection is significant. A study published in the Journal of Vestibular Research demonstrated that patients with vestibular disorders who reduced caffeine consumption experienced an average 40% decrease in symptom frequency. For Carlos, I recommended a gradual caffeine reduction, never cut abruptly, as this can trigger withdrawal symptoms that include headaches and more dizziness. We started by replacing some cups of coffee with herbal teas, like chamomile and lemon balm, which have calming properties for the nervous system. At first, it was difficult. Doctor felt tired and had headaches, but after 2 weeks, not only did my dizziness decrease considerably, but my sleep improved and I started feeling more consistent energy without the peaks and valleys I had before. Carlos reported after a month following the plan. If you regularly consume caffeine and suffer with consider reducing your intake to a maximum of 100 milligrams per day, approximately 1 cup of coffee. Preferably consumed after a meal, never on an empty stomach. And remember, decaffeinated beverages still contain small amounts of caffeine, so monitor your total intake. Now, let's continue our journey and discover the third food that may be sabotaging your balance system. The third food that frequently triggers labyrinthitis episodes is something you probably consume every day without noticing its harmful effects. Foods high in sodium or simply salt. Have you ever noticed how bloated you feel after eating Chinese food or fast food? That same bloating is happening in tissues throughout your body, including your inner ear. John, 65, a former bus driver, came to my clinic after 3 severe vertigo episodes in a single month. Doctor, the last episode was so violent that I fell in the bathroom and needed 6 stitches on my forehead. I'm afraid to even shower alone now, he confessed with a choked voice. Analyzing John's eating patterns, I identified that he loved pickled foods, processed meats, and ready-made meals, all notoriously high in sodium. What happens in our body when we consume excess salt is a marvel of chemistry, but can be devastating for those suffering with balance disorders. Sodium attracts and retains water, creating a hydroelectrolyte imbalance that directly affects the endolymph, the fluid present in the inner ear labyrinth. This fluid needs to maintain a specific composition so that the delicate sensory cilia can correctly detect our position in space. When there's excess sodium, a water influx occurs into this compartment, increasing pressure and interfering with the inner ear's ability to provide accurate information to the brain about balance and spatial position. It's as if your body's gyroscope are providing incorrect readings due to a system imbalance. Studies conducted by Johns Hopkins Medicine demonstrated that sodium-restricted diets can significantly reduce the frequency and intensity of vertiginous episodes in patients with Meniere's disease and other vestibular disorders. For John, we created a gradual sodium reduction plan, limiting to 1,500 milligrams daily, less than a teaspoon. I taught him to read labels and identify hidden sodium in processed foods. At first, I thought everything would be tasteless, doctor. But I started using fresh herbs and lemon to flavor foods, and after a few weeks, my palate adapted. The most impressive thing is that I haven't had any more severe episodes, just occasional mild dizziness. John reported 3 months later, with a smile he hadn't displayed in years. If you suffer with labyrinthitis, try reducing your sodium intake for 30 days. Avoid processed foods, which can contain up to 75% of the sodium we consume daily, and prefer fresh foods prepared at home. Use a potassium-based salt substitute or herbs to season your foods. Remember, it's not necessary to make food tasteless. It's possible to reduce sodium while maintaining the pleasure of eating. But be careful. Don't reduce sodium drastically all at once, as this can also cause electrolytic imbalances. A gradual reduction is always the safest and most sustainable approach. Now, let's discover the second most problematic food for those suffering with labyrinthitis and vertigo. The second food that frequently triggers labyrinthitis episodes, and that may be present in your daily diet without you suspecting, is monosodium glutamate, better known as MSG. This food additive is present in instant soups, ready-made seasonings, snacks, industrial sauces, and countless processed foods. Anna, 72, grandmother, of 5 grandchildren, came to my office after a sequence of episodes that prevented her from caring for her grandchildren as she loved to do. Doctor, I can't bend down to play with them on the floor anymore. I'm terrified of having an episode when I'm alone with the children. I don't know what to do anymore. She broke down, with tears in her eyes. When examining the food diary I asked Anik to keep for 2 weeks, I noticed an interesting pattern. Her most intense episodes occurred consistently. 12 to 24 hours after consuming foods rich in monosodium glutamate, despite being approved as safe by regulatory agencies, is an excitotoxin, a substance that can overstimulate neurons to the point of cellular damage. Research conducted by Harvard University and Cleveland Clinic suggests that MSG can affect sensitive people in various ways, including worsening vestibular problems. Glutamate is a neurotransmitter that participates in signal transmission in the nervous system, including pathways related to balance. In susceptible people, excess glutamate can interfere with normal communication between the inner ear and brain, amplifying the signals we interpret as dizziness, imbalance, and vertigo. It's like someone turning up the volume on a radio with interference. The noise becomes unbearable. For Anna, I recommended a completely MSG-free diet for 60 days. This required a significant change, eliminating practically all processed foods and restaurant meals that couldn't guarantee the absence of the additive. It was harder than I imagined. Dr. MSG is hidden in so many places that I had to prepare practically everything at home from scratch. But after just 3 weeks, I had an improvement that I never expected even in my most optimistic dreams. I went back to playing on the floor with my grandchildren, something I hadn't done for more than a year. Aina reported in her follow-up appointment, with eyes shining with emotion. If you suffer with labyrinthitis or vertigo, consider eliminating MSG from your diet for at least a month. Pay attention to labels, as this additive can appear under different names: monosodium glutamate, hydrolyzed protein, yeast extract, sodium glutamate, among others. Prepare your meals at home using fresh and natural ingredients. And when eating out, don't hesitate to ask about the presence of MSG. Many restaurants, especially those serving Asian cuisine, already offer options without this additive. An important observation: some people sensitive to MSG may also react to foods naturally rich in glutamate, like tomatoes, aged cheeses, and mushrooms. If you don't observe significant improvement after eliminating industrialized MSG, consider also temporarily reducing these foods. Now, we've reached the most anticipated moment. Let's reveal the number 1 food that may be silently provoking your labyrinthitis episodes, and believe me, this one surprises even experienced professionals. Finally, we've reached the first and most surprising food that may be triggering your labyrinthitis episodes: dairy products, especially cow's milk and its derivatives. That's right, that glass of milk you drink before bed, thinking you're doing good for your health, could be the silent trigger behind your vertigo episodes. Peter, 55, a successful businessman, came to my clinic after having his life completely disrupted by recurring and debilitating labyrinthitis episodes. Doctor, I've already consulted 5 specialists, did every possible exam, take expensive medications, and still have episodes that leave me bedridden for days. I'm losing important contracts because I never know when I'll be well enough for a meeting. He explained, visibly frustrated and hopeless. Peter's clinical history was intriguing. His exams showed no structural abnormalities, infections, or other typical causes of labyrinthitis, and yet he suffered with severe symptoms. I requested that he keep a detailed diary of recording food, activities, and symptoms. After 3 weeks, a pattern emerged. The most intense episodes frequently occurred between 24 and 48 hours after consuming significant amounts of dairy products. What makes dairy products so problematic for the vestibular system? There are multiple mechanisms involved, all surprisingly well documented in recent research. First, many adults have some degree of lactose intolerance without knowing it, which causes intestinal inflammation. This inflammation doesn't stay restricted to the digestive system. It releases inflammatory cytokines that travel through the bloodstream and can affect the delicate vestibular system. Second, milk proteins particularly can trigger autoimmune responses in genetically predisposed people, leading to inflammation in the inner ear. Third, milk and its derivatives can alter the composition of the fluid essential for proper balanced system functioning. A study published in the American Journal of Otolaryngology followed 78 patients with chronic vestibular disorders who didn't respond to conventional treatments. Surprisingly, 72% of those who completely eliminated dairy products for 3 months experienced significant reduction in symptom frequency and intensity. For Peter, I proposed an elimination test. Completely remove all dairy products for 60 days. Doctor, I'll be honest, I thought it was another food conspiracy theory. I love cheese, have yogurt every day at breakfast, and always end the night with a glass of milk, but I was so desperate that I agreed to try. He confessed. I helped Peter find adequate substitutes. Plant-based milks fortified with calcium, coconut or almond yogurts, vegan cheeses for moments of greater craving. 2 weeks later, Peter called me in tears. Doctor, it's the first time in 3 years that I've gone 15 days without any vertigo episode. Not even mild dizziness, which was constant. I can't believe the solution was so simple. Upon completing 60 days, Peter reintroduced a dairy product to test natural yogurt at breakfast. The next day, he experienced mild dizziness that lasted a few hours. The test confirmed the connection. Now that you know the 5 foods that may be silently triggering your labyrinthitis episodes, let's talk about what to do with this information. The message I want to leave is one of genuine hope. Labyrinthitis and vertigo don't need to be conditions you simply learn to live with, limiting your life and dreams. You have the power to investigate and identify your personal triggers, implementing changes that can result in surprising improvements. Many of my patients report not only the reduction or elimination of episodes, but also unexpected improvements in other aspects of their health. More energy, better digestion, less joint pain, better sleep. This happens because many of the foods we discussed today don't only affect the vestibular system. They can cause systemic inflammation that impacts the entire organism. If you're suffering with labyrinthitis or vertigo right now, I want you to know there is hope. Which of the foods mentioned today do you suspect could be contributing to your symptoms? Share in the comments your experience and questions. If this video was useful to you, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more content about natural health and solutions for problems that often don't find answers in conventional medicine. Remember that each person is unique, and what worked for the patients I mentioned may not work exactly the same way for you, but knowing this information is already an important step in the right direction. If you know someone who suffers with vertigo or labyrinthitis, share this video. It could be the information that transforms this person's life. Until the next video, take care of yourself with wisdom and hope.